You are entering Nick and Mello's hyperspace.
Hello, I'm Carmelo, and my mascots need to be cute.
And I'm Nick, and I think droids are probably the most lovable things in all of Star Wars.
In our journey through hyperspace, we examine everything and anything Star Wars from the point of view of two lifelong fans, one young, one old, came together through the will of the Force.
In this episode, we're going to talk about mascots. Does Star Wars have one, or does it particularly need one? So, Carmelo, I guess that's what I'm going to ask you first. Does Star Wars really need a mascot?
Well, maybe because um, it's sort of fun to think about the idea of, are there characters that sort of summarize or wrap up the ideas of Star Wars itself? That's a sort of a really fun idea of thinking about one, finding one. I might end up with less hair than I already have, but it's a really interesting idea of trying to think, are there characters in the world that in a way sort of summarize all of the
Yeah.
ideas of Star Wars? And I probably will have a lot of trouble trying to find one, but I think it's an interesting idea. I think it's an interesting idea. Um, do you have a specific way of thinking about mascots before we talk about mascots in Star Wars? Like, what do you think of when you think of the idea of a mascot?
Yeah, I brought this up to my wife, and I think we were at a grocery store or something, and like Star Wars has like I think a lot of marketable, likable characters, and I kind of got me
Yeah,
thinking.
think.
It got me kind of thinking, because like Grogu is on everything now. I swear he's on like cereal boxes and yogurt and my shirt everywhere. And I am a fan of other things, other franchises like Marvel and DC Comics and things like that. And I would say like Spider-Man is the mascot of Marvel. He's the flagship character. Pokemon, which is probably more my generation.
Right.
Friends of mine that like Pikachu is the front and center. He is on everything. He leads the way. And I was thinking, like, does Star Wars have one? And I couldn't. My wife and I, we didn't really think of it. I mean, I
And
kind
it's
of have one, I guess, or a pair, if that makes any sense.
tell us about that pair.
Okay, so I always think, and it's probably because they're in almost every single film or series. R2 and 3PO to me are a staple of Star Wars.
Oh,
They have to be. To me, I don't know. I guess I take that back. They don't have to be in everything, but they're kind of a nice, warm, like they're a constant. They're going to be there. They're going to be reliable. Sometimes they're going to get in the way, but they're going to be there regardless of what's going on or what generation is involved. And that's kind of comforting in a lot of ways. And I think the idea of a mascot is something that you immediately recognize, and it brings back feelings, and you have an affection for, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. It does. And in many ways, I like your choice, because droids are really special in Star Wars.
They are.
It's really interesting how they are yet another life. They might not be biological, but they are artificial life in a very real way. And so choosing 3PO and R2 as a possible mascot for Star Wars makes a lot of sense. It's really interesting how when you translate R2D2 into Spanish, it's Arturito, which is little Arthur.
Oh,
And so it's actually a name. They're just not letters.
Yeah.
Is actually a name. And so it's really fun how the droids, when they dub Star Wars into Spanish, it becomes a regular person's name, Arturito, little Arthur. And so it's really fun how we have humanized or anthropomorphized the droids, and that's sort of part of what a mascot is.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget that Star Wars is commerce. That
Yes.
There's merchandise to spare in Star Wars, and so the idea of the mascot connected to it is I think very real. I think very real. I think you have that Grogu T-shirt in there, and I think in many ways, Grogu is another mascot.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that is sort of really fascinating about Star Wars is that there's always this element of cuteness.
Mm.
We have Death Stars exploding and genocide and little Padawans being killed at the end of Revenge of the Sith. But then you have Grogu, and then you have Porgs,
Yeah.
and then you have Ewoks. And so I think, I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
serious. Like, there's this real darkness to a lot of the stories, but at the same time, there's always this sort of element of, oh. I discovered recently when I was at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago recently, several years ago, thanks to the pandemic, thank you very much, that the Porgs have an actual Facebook page.
Oh,
Porgs
nice.
have a Facebook page. And so there's this really interesting notion that the element of cuteness in Star Wars is an integral element. It's not just there as commercial teddy bears that are Ewoks turning to teddy bears that you're going to sell. And it's true, it's part of there. But there is a very intriguing, attractive element of the notion of cuteness that I think connects very much to your idea of the mascot. And 3PO and R2 are charming enough. I think 3PO is annoying sometimes, but R2 is very charming. He's sort of feisty. But there's a charm to it. And so for me, this connection of cuteness and I think the idea of charm has to be an element of the idea of the mascot. So do you have anything to say about cuteness? I don't. That's just sort of an idea that I had, but we haven't really talked about what you think about cuteness in Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that kind of just shows that Star Wars is for all ages. That there's not really a particular demographic. I mean, in a sense, there is that Lucas intended these films to be for teenage boys, and he said that multiple times. But there, like you said, there are very dark moments in the series. There's limbs getting cut off constantly, and people having heroic sacrifices, and
I'm sure somewhere online we can get the list of all of the hands that get cut off in Star Wars,
all the body
including the comics and the novels and the books, and
I'm sure we can.
Maybe not in a little golden book, but everywhere else, someone's hand or arm gets cut off somewhere.
It's weird, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, on the flip side, you have all that, but yeah, like you said, there's adorable little Ewoks who are, while Luke is having a final confrontation with the Emperor and Vader, and then we'll cut to a scene where the Ewoks are doing something. Oh, look at them, they're helping out. And then we're like, oh, Luke's about to get Vader, cut Vader's hands off. So it's
right.
It's very like polar opposites in a lot of ways, but yeah, like I said, I think it just shows that Star Wars can be for anyone. And mascots, obviously, like we said earlier, with marketing and being commercialized, like you obviously want to put something that's accessible to kids, and that parents or even grandparents would be like, oh, look how sweet, and it's just a little green little guy. My granddaughter loves it. Or then you have the dad who's his Vader shirt and his tattoo and stuff. So it's
what is interesting about Grogu is that he is loved by everyone. I mean, there are very few people out there that say, oh, that disgusting little creature, why do you think it's cute? It's like, no.
I've never heard anyone say that.
I'm sure there are Star Wars haters in the basement trolling every single human being in the planet who has a little Grogu t-shirt or stuffed animal or little decal attached to their computer, because that thing has just
taken off,
swallowed up the galaxy. And so I like your R2 and 3PO because of the history, or as we said in another podcast, because of the legacy of 3PO and R2. But I think Grogu is up there. I'm starting to push my envelope here for Grogu as a non-artificial life mascot.
I think it could be a generational thing too. R2 and 3PO are very involved in the original trilogy, and obviously they show up in the prequels and sequels even. But in the sequels we get introduced to BB-8. I think he's kind of at that generation or that era, he's kind of the face.
He's my baby. I'm
Yeah,
55, but
he's
he's
great.
my baby. I mean,
He's awesome.
I was sold like that.
I
Sold
was
like that.
hesitant at first, but he
Oh,
grew
no,
on
I was
me.
not. No,
And yeah, and
I
like
was I was
Grogu.
hesitant. I was hesitant with Chopper in Rebels,
Really?
but
Oh,
BB-8 was like, I'm taking you home right now,
I need
right
one. Get me
now.
one.
And I was thinking, how in many ways, and we can have a podcast about this. Force Awakens is sort of like trying to rethink New Hope
Yeah.
with all of the story points and all of that. And the first people that speak in New Hope are droids. Is 3PO saying, "Did you hear that?" And it's really interesting that Force Awakens starts, the first creature that we see is BB-8 sort of looking at the landing and then running to tell Poe. So
Mhm.
it's fun that these droids, these artificial mechanical beings, have such importance in Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're
Like
they're they're essential elements. They're essential elements. So
yeah. Yeah,
that's fun.
they're like in a lot of ways they're kind of like ride along characters. They're kind of witnessing all this with us, and I think that's
Hmm.
kind of why
Hmm.
they're always
Hmm.
they're relatable. They
Yes.
like I said earlier, they get in the way or they're helping out some way, but they're very important. And then like we see a lot in another podcast, we'll talk about family. They become part of the family too. Like you
Yes.
mentioned, Chopper, he is very
Like
integral.
Chopper. Absolutely.
He's very in part with that team, and
Yes.
same with
Yes.
R2 and 3PO in the original trilogy. They are just, especially Luke and R2. I've always loved their relationship. I thought that's
Hmm.
such a cool
Hmm.
element to introduce, and yeah, that we.
There's one of the things about BB-8 that I find always really interesting is that the relationship between Poe and BB-8,
Mhm.
it's always moving from friend to pet to friend to pet to friend.
Hmm.
And so there's this really zigzagging about how they relate, but it's always a very authentic, emotional relationship,
Yeah,
whether it's as a friend or as a pet. Because I am the first saying a relationship with a pet is a real, effective, emotional relation. And so it's really interesting how in Star Wars, biological beings have these relationships with droids all of the time, and so that's really fun. I don't know if we have come to a decision, and we don't have to put a little battle between Grogu and
right.
3PO and R2, because R2 and Grogu meet at the end of Mandalorian, so that's sort
That's
of fun
great.
too.
That's very
Um,
fun.
and so there's all these speculation, like, did they meet before? Are they going to meet later? Like, what are they going to do? But we ain't doing speculations here.
No, no,
So
sir.
we'll see what happens with that. But this is an interesting conversation. It's a really,
Yeah,
it's a no. It's I remember the first time you mentioned, let's talk about mascots, and I'm like, what? But now I'm really intrigued by the idea. It's a really fun way of thinking of Star Wars.
Hmm.
Um, not only because of the story, but because I don't think we can forget that this is a commercial enterprise. And
Yes,
so the notion of the mascot is sort of connected to that idea. I never forget that Lucasfilm has a third of my salary. So if not more. Oh my God. Every time I go to celebration, I'm like, how much did I spend again? Oh my God. Oh, it's
yeah.
crazy.
Well,
Anyway,
we love it for many
yes.
reasons, but yeah, I think mascots, like we were saying earlier, I think they are. Star Wars may not really have one like other franchises, but there are a lot of little things, like we mentioned, Porgs and Ewoks that are unique to Star Wars, and
Mhm.
um, they are one of those things that if somebody says an Ewok, there's like everybody knows what an Ewok is. I feel like,
Mhm.
and that's
Mhm.
just that is Star Wars, and yeah, Star
Well,
Wars is
and it's
probably.
and sorry to interrupt.
I was gonna say Star Wars is probably always going to keep coming up with new cute things, and
Mhm.
they're always going to market them and put them on shirts and lunchboxes, and it's probably never going to end.
And
But
the thing is that certain people are going to be attracted to certain things. Ewoks don't do anything for me. They just
I'm
don't
with you.
do anything
I'm
for
with
me.
you.
And porgs, I could have porgs everywhere. I could have like 17,000. I don't have any, but I could have 17,000 porgs just littering my office in my college.
That's
I would be
funny.
very happy. And so when I dress up, like really dress up, I always have like a little pork pin in the lapel of my double-breasted jacket.
Nice.
It's really nice.
Nice.
Anyway, and on that note, thank you very much for joining us, guys. We will continue Star Warsing on our podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, guys.